3I Atlas just flipped its jets. For months, this massive interstellar visitor has been ejecting material towards the sun, behavior that breaks the rules for normal comets. Now, that jet has reversed into a conventional tail streaming away from the sun. The Nordic Optical Telescope in the Canary Islands captured the transition, and Avi Loeb and his team released their analysis on it too. Let us break down what just happened and why this matters. As always, I'm here to report the information without bias, and you can decide what to believe. You can find the sources in my detailed articles at ufonews.co, along with in the description box below. Hey followers, I'm Cristina Gomez, and welcome to this episode of UFO News Updates.
We are seeing the anti-tail that was pointed towards the sun, opposite to what we see in the context of comets, and now changing direction and going away from the sun, the more conventional way. We don't know what the reason is.
Imagine driving a car. When you want to slow down, you hit the brakes. When you want to speed up again, you hit the gas. According to Avi Loeb, 3I Atlas just switched from brakes to gas. New imaging from the 2.5-meter Nordic Optical Telescope confirms that between July and September of this year, 3I Atlas completely reversed its jet direction. In July and August, material was shooting towards the sun, creating what scientists call an anti-tail. By September, that anti-tail transformed into a normal tail pointing away from the sun. Why does this matter? Well, normal comets do not create anti-tails. When comets approach the sun, solar radiation pushes material away, creating tails that always points away from the sun. An anti-tail pointing towards the sun is unusual and requires special conditions to explain. Avi Loeb and researcher Eric Keto published a model explaining this change, and their analysis shows as 3I Atlas gets closer to the sun, the surface heats up dramatically, and this heat causes frozen carbon dioxide or dry ice to turn directly into gas, a process called sublimation. That escaping gas carries water ice fragments with it, creating the glow that we see. At distances of 3 or 4 times Earth's distance from the sun, water ice fragments create most of the visible glow. Closer in, those ice particles evaporate quickly and longer-lasting dust takes over, forming the conventional tail we see streaming away from the sun. Here's what Avi Loeb mentioned on News Nation.
We see some unusual composition of nickel with very little iron that we only find in industrially produced nickel alloys. And the size of the object, it's at least 1,000 times more massive than the previous interstellar objects we've seen. And the question is, why is such a giant object delivered to our inner solar system when we saw only small ones before?
Stay with me, there's still so much more that we have to cover and the dates that we need to look out for. The size and composition continue to set 3I Atlas apart from any previously observed interstellar visitor. Here is the critical detail most people are missing. We're only seeing the outer skin of the object. Between July and October of this year, 3I Atlas shed approximately 2 million tons of material. Now, that sounds enormous, but it represents less than 0.00005% of the object's total mass that we currently know of. Think of it like this. If 3I Atlas were Manhattan Island, the material we have seen evaporate would be thinner than the paint of a single building. The Hubble Space Telescope captured images on July 21st of this year, showing a pronounced sunward jet with an elongated shape resembling a focused beam rather than a random spray. Loeb and Keto explained this sunward jet as being created by sunlight bouncing off water ice fragments ejected from the nucleus due to carbon dioxide sublimation. Listen to what he said on Fox News.
There is also a possibility, if you imagine the gases coming out of 3I Atlas having a technological origin, perhaps the object is preparing to do some kind of a maneuver and changes the alpha. At the moment, obviously, it would be most natural to assume that it's a comet of natural origin, but we should keep our eyes and check what it does.
While Loeb emphasizes that the most natural assumption is a comet of natural origin, he stresses the importance of keeping watch on what happens next.
it could be also a mothership that releases mini probes that maneuver. And so I tasked the research team of the Galileo project. We have 3 observatories monitoring the sky to check for any unusual activity in the coming months. We have also orbiters around Mars that could check for unusual activity there. So I think we should keep our eyes open and not assume anything, because it could be a black swan event where something that looks natural at first ends up being like a Trojan horse, and because the implications are so huge for humanity, we must consider it seriously.
The implications for humanity demand that we observe carefully rather than dismissing unusual findings based on assumptions alone. October 29th marks a critical moment. This is when 3I Atlas reaches perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun.
On October 21st, that was a couple of days ago, it was in solar conjunction relative to Earth, meaning exactly on the opposite side of the Sun. So if you were looking at the sky that day and seeing the sun up there, you can imagine 3I Atlas just behind it, perfectly behind it, so we can't observe it for sure. And we can't observe it throughout the month of October, actually, because it's so close to the sun, perhaps for a reason. If it was trying to avoid us noticing that it releases mini probes or doing some maneuver, that would be the perfect timing, because when it comes closest to the sun, it moves at the fastest speed, and then if you want to get a thrust from an engine, that would be the perfect timing, because if you get the thrust in the direction of motion, then you gain the biggest amount of kinetic energy.
There is a principle in space flight called the Oberth effect. In simple terms, if you want to change your speed or direction in space, most effectively, you do it when you are moving fastest. And you move fastest when you are closest to a massive object like the sun. As Loeb mentioned, this is called gravitational assist from a massive object like the sun. For 3I Atlas, this optimal window occurs on October 29th at perihelion, 8 days after it passes behind the sun on October 21st. The object will be completely hidden from Earth-based observation during the single most efficient maneuver window for any interstellar arrival. Is this timing mere coincidence, or does it affect intentional design?
In fact, 3I Atlas has 8 anomalies. It's very big. It's at least 1,000 times more massive than previous interstellar objects. It's also in the plane of the planets around the sun. The chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500. It showed the unusual composition, only 4% water. It has nickel with very little iron, the way that the industrial production of nickel alloys appear. It also appeared from the same direction as the WOW signal that was detected in 1977.
Let me break down why each of these matter. First, the mass. 3I Atlas is at least 1,000 times more massive than the first 2 interstellar objects that we have detected. That is like comparing a cargo ship to a kayak. Why would such a massive object arrive from interstellar space? Second, the orbital alignment. The object travels between 5 degrees of the elliptical plane, which is the flat disk where all planets orbit. The chance of an object from interstellar space randomly aligning this closely is that in 1 in 500. Most objects should come from any direction in 3-dimensional space. Third, the composition. Only 4% water is extremely low for a comet. Most comets are much richer in water ice. The nickel to iron ratio also resembles industrial alloys rather than natural cosmic ratios. Fourth, the direction of arrival. The object came from the same direction as the WOW signal, a famous radio signal detected back in 1977 and has never been explained. The real test arrives when 3I Atlas emerges from behind the sun on November 3rd, and the European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft will observe it on November 4th, and on December 19th, 2025, the object makes its closest approach to Earth at 269 million kilometers, followed by a JUICE flyby on March 16th, 2026, where NASA's Juno spacecraft will observe using multiple instruments. The International Asteroid Warning Network, an organization associated with the United Nations, has mobilized a coordinated global observation campaign between November 27th and January 27th, providing the most comprehensive data set ever collected on 3I Atlas, which was talked about in more detail in yesterday's video. Loeb believes that by January, we should have a good idea about the nature of this object.
Is there a date we should know, yes or no, on this, or what it is?
Yeah, I believe that by January we should have a good idea about the nature of the object.
I'm Cristina Gomez, and that is it for today. I will see you again tomorrow at 10 a.m. PST for another UFO news update. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoyed today's show, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit the notification bell as I do daily UFO news and updates. Fresh UAP stories, government disclosures, and breaking developments land here every single day.